Hi. Well, where can I begin?
I've got a real treat for you today. You may remember a certain video that we did in January where we followed a day in the life of the most extreme vinyl record collector I've ever heard of. His name was Barry, Mr. Vertigo, and you guys watched it, you guys loved it, and over all social medias, the main video itself and clips of the video gained over 1 million views. It was picked up by small news outlets and even Discogs themselves. So today, I'm introducing you back to Barry himself, where he's going to go into some of the very rarest vinyl records he owns on the Vertigo Swirl label. It is a long one, but I promise you it is full, jam-packed with musical wisdom and knowledge, and a few personal stories from Barry that will honestly amaze you. I'm going to let him take over now.
Firstly, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for watching the first show. And I read all your comments, and I'm absolutely touched. A few people I'd like to mention: Paul from the Rock On store, a wonderful guy called Mark Beard, who used to be the press officer at Castle Communications, and another blast in the past, Ian Atwell, who used to work for me when I had a shop in Carnaby Street many moons ago. I mean, what can I say? I love you all. I'm absolutely amazed by the amount of interest that people have had in me. And people have also said that I didn't show enough of my collection. So Jake is now back, and we're now about to start doing a second show, okay? I'm just thrilled to bits, okay? Really, I don't really know what to say.
Good to see you again, honestly.
Thank you very, very much, Jake, and it's a pleasure for you to be back, and welcome back to my humble abode once again.
It feels like heaven in here.
Thank you. Well, I suppose it is my little heaven. I mean, it's my retreat at the end of these days, and I come back, and I love being surrounded by music. So, we're back, and Jake has asked me to talk about the Vertigo collection.
You are Mr. Vertigo.
Thank you so much. The purpose, since the first show, we did talk about a few of the spirals in Rise Above, okay? And we started talk. We're going to come to this one first of all, okay? The Ramases album, which we didn't look at completely. Oh, by the way, Jake, this is an original spiral Vertigo, this one here, and I've got a spaceship which I'm going to let you have as a present, okay?
Thank you so much.
That's fine. You'll enjoy it, okay? Now that's an original one, okay? Let me just get this out. Now that is my all-time favourite sleeve. Okay?
You know what? I've never seen it folded out like that. I always just thought it was a spaceship.
A work of art. I mean, look at that, okay?
That's unbelievable.
Incredible.
I had no idea that it was that.
Yes. So let me just talk about the people behind making this album. Soulkit, she was the keeper of the love of protection or something. Now, Ramases, his real name was Barrington Frost. Okay, now he was a former central heating salesman. And how I know about Ramases was because my cousin married the sound engineer from 10cc, and 10cc came to her wedding. And I found Kevin Godley particularly to be very approachable, the drummer with 10cc. And I said, I've got to ask you, Kevin, about an album you've done called Space Hymns. And he looked amazed that anyone knew what it was. He said to me, well, we had just got Graham Gouldman into the band, okay? So we were from Hot Legs into 10cc. And we were trying out new equipment like synthesizers, sitars, and we were looking for our sound. And this chap, Ramases, came in. He was a bit of an oddball. And it's a true story, because this chap was a central heating salesman. He was apparently quite wealthy. And one day he had a visitation from a spaceman, or so the story says. And he believed himself to be the reincarnation of the Pharaoh Ramases. So, you know, within days he sold off all his mohair suits, and he was strutting around Sheffield wearing breast of armours and odd kind of like garments, and he became a sensation. Anyway, him and his wife, her name was Dorothy, they decided to, channel their musical energies. And they've got to deal with, I think they released 2 singles, Major Minor and CBS, but they didn't do anything. So the time they got around to doing this album, interesting record. I mean, amazing, amazing cover. Brilliant. How do I rate this album? Good. I mean, it's got some very good, interesting pieces of music on there. Life Child, the undoubted highlight of the album. The middle part was later incorporated on 10cc's How Dare You. So I think they still, held this record in high regard, okay? Good one to start with there, okay? Ramases Space Hymns. And they also do Midnight Cowboy, You Were the Only One, Joe. It's good. It's a good record, actually. Yeah, okay. Right, so here we go. That's my first choice, okay?
How many are you going to show us today?
Well, how many do you want? How many shall I get out for you?
As many as you'd like to share.
Well, okay. Well, I've got about 15. I mean, I could get out a load more, but, time permitting.
15 is great.
Right, thankfully. Right, now here we go. Now, the second album I think I'm going to go through, because this chap, he and I also have a very long-term connection. Nirvana, okay?
Not the 90s.
No, nothing at all. I remember one of the funniest times, I used to get lots of freebies given to me by record companies, and back in the day I'd be going into Virgin Records and doing change-ups, okay, and it really tickled me that one day this elderly woman came in and she was explaining to the chap in the counter that her grandson was a big fan of Nirvana, and she bought the British Nirvana CD called All of Us, and the grandson just couldn't make head or tail of it. He asked her to return it to get the grunge Nirvana. Anyway, great sleeve, okay? This was taken at a derelict house in Slough. What I did say to you on our last visit, this lady here, she was also on the cover of the Vertigo Annual in 1970, Affinity. Okay, this one, great sleeve. Patrick Campbell is here, if you see him, okay? Now, this album, I mean, I personally love Nirvana, and I think the 60s, songs like Rainbow Chaser, All of Us, Girl in the Park, Tiny Goddess were great Baroque kind of like psychedelic pieces.
Is that what this is?
This album, I hate to say it to you, and have made my feelings known about this album to Patrick Campbell. It's a mess. Unfortunately, I think what Patrick had in mind about doing this was it's a solo album, and he tried his hand at trying to record a progressive type jazz rock album. It's got a few good moments, but it doesn't really hold together, and it's one which, out of all the 5 Nirvana albums, this is probably the one which I would put at the bottom of the pile. Now, okay, let's go into this one, okay? Jazz rock album here, okay?
Bob Downs.
Bob Downs Open Music, yes. Now, the reason why I have poured out this album, it's got like the creme de la creme of all the jazz musicians on it. Chris Spedding, Kenny Wheeler, Herbie Flowers, lots of good people, okay? The reason I've decided to pull out this album, Bob Downs Open Music, Electric City, I went to a school in Swiss Cottage. I lasted there for 1 term, I've got to tell you, okay? And I got friendly with a chap who I remember as Julian Benker, lovely guy. And his mum, Wendy, was Bob Downs' partner. And because, Julian and I were friends, I used to go around to visit him quite a lot. And that's where I first met Bob. Great flautist, very talented musician. I remember him particularly, he was from Plymouth, but he had like a manic sort of sense of humour, very, very, very funny, okay? And if you engaged him in any conversation, any level of conversation, he was always talking about sex all the time. Anyway, about 25 years ago, I tried to track him down, and he's now living in Germany, and I did track him down. And he remembered me when I'm coming to see my mum. His mum was fairly elderly. Next time I'm coming to the UK, I want to come and meet you again, Barry. And we did. We had like a very brief reunion. And he was exactly the same. But he was a lovely bloke. I mean, this is quite a nice little record as well. Very much of its time. Okay, so here we go. Right, Clear Blue Sky. Okay, now this is a very important album to me for various reasons. When I had the green light to praise the Vertigo article in '89, I remember this album particularly well, and the reason why, Jake, I bought a lot of these at the time from Harlequin Records. I think that I went into quite a lot of detail about that shop, but I used to really like going in there. I remember they had a big sale of Vertigo records because simply they did not sell at all, okay? And this was one which I rescued. Okay, and I got home.
This exact same press?
Yes, it is. Would you believe it? Yes. I mean, this has been with me throughout my entire life, okay? Got it home, and I was amazed. Okay, if I listen to it now, I mean, this was another one which, this was the first production by Patrick Campbell, okay? So I've heard many stories of how this album was recorded and how it came out. But it was a very promising band. And when I heard it, I loved it. Great kind of like guitar riffs. And it really, the whole thing really works together very well. If I listen to it now, it does sound a little bit ploddy, a little bit amateurish in parts. But I think it still has the basis of being a really good album. And I think this was a band that I would have liked to have seen doing a second album because I think they could have developed very well. Anyway, I gave this album a particularly good review, okay? A couple of weeks later, John Sims, this is John Sims here, okay? Hasn't changed at all. It looks exactly the same, by the way. All right, man, there you go, mate. That's what John always says to me on the phone, okay? Lovely, lovely guy. Anyway, so John contacted Record Collector to see who was waxing such praise upon them. He wrote to the collector and they passed him his phone number and I phoned him up. And straight away I was taken by what a lovely guy he is. Very, very, very friendly. Okay, he lived quite near me. He lived in Hayes and Harlington at the time, although he's now moved out of London. And it was very interesting to get a big insight because Clear Blue Sky was certainly around, and they played with a lot of Vertigo bands like Gran Bond, who I'll be coming to soon, and May Blitz, and very, very good. Anyway, I'm delighted to say that to this very, very day, John and I, with his charming wife Maxine, have remained the very best of friends. In fact, we're like a little family.
No.
Brilliant. Oh, this was used by Roger Dean as signature for many, many years afterwards. Great little album, yeah.
Something I've noticed with all the Vertigos is they all have such really cool covers, and they're quite
did.
Fantasical.
Well, they were, because I think, they had a chap, I'm going to come to him in a second, okay? We're going to talk about, well, let me get to this mama.
Coliseum.
Okay? Coliseum, okay. This was the very, very first ever Vertigo album, okay? Number one.
Is it number one for you?
Not number one, but it's going to be in my top 5. I mean, musically, it's an amazing record, okay? I mean, it's got everything you possibly want on there.
Is this the same woman as in the Nirvana cover? It looks
yes, this is the same lady as well. Yes, same one, yeah.
What is it with all of them using the same lady?
I think probably it could have been. Well, the chap that designed a lot of these Vertigo album covers, his name was Keith McMillan, okay? And he had an amazing sense, I mean, for, getting a project, okay? He'd be putting the images together, okay? And how these covers would pan out. And I think every single one of what he'd done, he had a wonderful imagination. He ended up becoming a video director. He worked with Kate Bush and a lot of Bob Marley, I believe, ABBA, lots and lots of famous people. I think he was a young guy, and he became a student, and he had just had this incredible vision of, doing album covers. And I think when I look upon the sleeves, they are very much now like works of art. But this was an explosive record. I mean, one which I still listen to now. And I don't think it's dated at all, okay? Anyone who hasn't got this really should have a listen to it. The second side is just amazing. One long piece of music goes on for about 20 minutes. You listen to it and you think, oh my God, I'm sorry that's finished. I want to, listen to it again. It's that good. Okay, so we've got that. Right. Well.
Oh, I know this one.
Here we go. Uriah Heep, very heavy, very humble. Well.
I could say a couple of things about
What
this
can
one
I
too,
say?
yeah.
Yes. Now, before many people wouldn't know, that is David Byron.
Yes.
The singer of Uriah Heep under a cobweb machine.
A machine?
Yes, Mick Box told me there was going to be various stages of how this album cover would look. But I think when they decided to call it Very Heavy, Very Humble, this kind of like spells it out, okay? So it was their best album, and I think that Uriah Heep matured very quickly.
What would you say their best album was?
My favourite ones, I would say
Mine's
Salisbury.
Demons and Wizards, I think.
Yes, I'd think Salisbury and Demons and Wizards particularly. That's when it all really clicked into place. I mean, you had the right people there. But anyway, this was Nigel Olsson, the drummer here. Bit of arm twisting, went on to play with Elton John's band. Apparently because Nigel Olsson, David Byron and Mick Box do covers for a Walthamstow label called Avenue Records. And Elton's career was taking off in the States. Went over to Nigel Olsson and said, look, what do you want to do? Do you want to join me? Or do you want to stick with this band? You come with me and I'll, steady work. We're doing the LA Troubadour. So half of this album was recorded with 2 drummers. I had another drummer on called Al Napier. And Ken Hensley joined halfway through.
I did not know that.
Yes, he did. I mean, the first half of the album was recorded with another keyboard player called Colin Wood.
Oh, wow.
School teacher friend of Jerry Bronze, playing with a Kevin Coyne band, a John Peel band called Siren. Okay, so he'd done half the first album.
So which songs did he play on and which songs were...
Ken.
Which sort of songs were done by the other keyboard player?
Well, I don't think anything. He was just really brought in as a session.
Oh, I see.
So really by this time, I mean, Paul Newton had played in the first 3 albums and had also played with Ken Hensley in The Gods.
Yes.
And before Ken joined Uriah Heep, he was playing in Tofat. So he came in, and I think the developments of the band, I mean, Gypsy, the opening track, was a killer.
Yes.
Apart from All in Your Mind by Stray, I would say that Gypsy is my favourite heavy rock track of all time. I mean, it just, wow. I mean, hearing that for the first time when I was 12 years old in 1970, you could imagine the kind of like the impact that had on me. It was incredible,
It just had such a great intro, and then it comes in with that thundering riff, doesn't it?
Brilliant. I mean, so, yeah, I mean, Ken Hensley wrote the sleeve notes, and I believe that he played on half the album. But I think the band found their feet, they found their niche very, very quickly. So the time they got round to doing their second album, Salisbury, they were a proper band. But I always felt slightly sorry for Uriah Heep because they came in the wake of other heavy bands like Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin, Steppenwolf. The reviews were so negative.
Really?
Yes. There was a review in Rolling Stone magazine written by Melissa Mills, and she wrote the most infamous review in history. If this band makes it, I'll have to commit suicide.
Wow.
You know, you hear 1 second of it, you just don't want to hear anymore. But no one ever knows what happened to Melissa Mills. But I do know that Uriah Heep went on to have with Mick Box leading the band now for many years, they're still going, and they're touring at the moment with Judas Priest.
They were in London a couple of
They were indeed, yes. I would have gone, but, you know, third on the bill and doing a half-an-hour set. Anyway, that's interesting. I wouldn't say it was a great album, but it was a very good start. I mean, I do like things like Come Away Melinda, the anti-war song was great. And I like Wake Up, Set Your Sights. That was another great song, okay? Very good. And David Byron, I think, was an extremely underrated frontman who doesn't get any credit at all, which is a great shame. Right, so we've done all these. Now, here we go. The whole ding of Vertigo feature would be incomplete without this. Okay, this is Dr. Z. 3 parts to my soul. I used to call it 3 parts to my bank account.
I'm sure a lot of people...
I know where you know what? I know where I bought this. This was in Brick Lane.
Oh, really?
Yes, in the late 70s. I found it in a box for £1.
Not many people can say they've done that.
No, but I don't think I've even hardly ever seen it since. Yes. It's a great fold-out cover as well. Brilliant, you know, real. Okay?
I think I might have only seen one in real life. I think
Victoria,
I think.
Yes, I very occasionally see the record. Now, this album here, Dr. Z, there's always been... I think there's a real mystique about it, and I do think it's an interesting album. Now, Dr. Z was never really a band. It was actually a professor. Professor Keith Keyes, who taught history at Swansea University. He'd done a single called Lady Ladybird. It's like a freak beat single, and it's a good track. And nothing happened to the single. And Patrick Campbell picked up on it through a cassette, which Professor Keith sent to Phillips, or as it were, and picked up. And Pat Lyons it was a very good ideas man, Patrick is. And he listened to it and he thought, right, we've got something here. He went up to Wales and he met Keith. They spent the weekend together. And Keith came down to London to Island Studios, okay? And he brought with him 2 of his students, the drummer and a bass player. And I think the whole thing was written, recorded, and I think in about 1 or 2 days. Quite good. I think it's certainly got something on there. Barney Bubbles, who created some amazing artwork like In Search of Space by Hawkwind and Space Ritual. He designed this cover.
It's a cool cover, isn't it?
It's a great sleeve, yeah, I do like it. Funny enough, Trevor Lucas from Fotheringay and Fairfield Convention, he assisted Richard Digby Smith, okay? Produced by Keith Keyes, executive producer Patrick Campbell-Lyons. Yeah, good album, yeah. Pretty good.
Why do you think why is it so rare? Is it because not a lot of people liked it?
I think with this album, well, okay, let me tell you what happened. After the success that Black Sabbath had after Master of Reality, there was probably less, after that, we're going to concentrate on bands who are going to make money for the company. So a lot of albums that came out in the Ramases, Dr. Z, I think pretty much came out at the same time, okay, then I just don't think there was kind of like anything commercial about them. I think, that people, record bars of the day, would see this. And I think what I remember about the period, Jake, I was very young at the time, I was 13 when this came out, but there was so much good product coming out that, records like this just got left behind. I mean, it wasn't promoted. Dr. Z never ever played live. This was a project. Once it was completed, he was never heard from again.
That's why I think it's so mystical.
So I think, when a lot of these rarities started to get picked... What I remember about records being picked up again, it got picked up by the Germans and the Japanese. And suddenly, Spiral Vertigo albums came back into vogue again. I remember this was amongst the very, very first. There used to be once lists, shops like Funhouse Records, Final Solution, and this was always on the once list. Dr. Z, 3 parts to my soul, will pay £20. It was like a fortune back in those days.
Yeah.
Who'd want to pay 20 quid for an album? But it couldn't have sold more than about 300 or 400 copies, if that.
You think so?
Yeah. Good album. I mean, anyone who doesn't know this album, you manage to get a reissue of it.
Yeah.
I do recommend that it's a good listen. Yeah, good stuff. Right, so let's move along. Oh, here we go. Well, you know me, and everyone knows I'm a massive Manfred Mann fan, okay?
Manfred Mann's Earth Band, though, right?
Well, it would be Manfred Mann's Earth Band, yes. Apparently that Manfred did see it, the first show, and he liked it.
Oh, he did?
Well, he did. I mean, especially me giving him such praise. But I'm going to give you praise again, Manfred, okay? So here we go. I'm going to go back to Manfred Mann, Chapter 3, Volume 1. Okay, now here we go. Jake.
Yes.
What I think of Manfred Mann was a very, very brave move, because they were still having success up until the point this album came out. They ended their 17th hit single, Ragamuffin Man, came out, and it was a good song to end on. The band broke up. They all went solo. Mark Darboe, Klaus Voormann done work with, Plastic Ono Band, and George Harrison, John Lennon, Ringo Starr. He was Klaus Voormann was very much in the inner circle of the Beatles, who designed the Revolver album. Very brilliant graphic artist, okay? So with Tom McGuinness, Wellington McGuinness, Flint, Mark Hugg, I decided to stay with Manfred. Now, this was a complete, and I've got proof of this as well. By the time this album came out, Manfred Mann, that's Manfred, no longer wanted to be a pop star, okay? So how do I change? Well, we're going to stop trying to have hit singles, okay? I'm a jazz musician. I want to do what I want to play. And this is very, very much an album, what I would say is getting it off my chest, okay? I think it's, funnily enough, when I talk to people about Manfred Mann, very often Chapter 3 get mentioned a lot. And the reason why they've become very hip, I don't think Earth Band or the 60s Manfred Mann, they deserve a lot more credit, but Chapter 3 seemed to be very much in vogue, and there's a track on this called Snakeskin Garter, okay? It's a great track. So, and also One Way Glass.
Manfred Mann was obviously a pop artist in the 60s. Was this kind of the iteration in between that and Earth Band?
Yes, it was. Well, this was the band that became in between, okay? So very much this was like, if I bought Ragamuffin Man, if I liked all the old hits like Semi-Detached Suburban, Heart of the Clown, I mean, I was probably more familiar with the Mike Darboe period of Manfred Mann to what I was with the Paul Jones. Now, if I was a fan of those pop, the pop era and heard this, I think I'd be shocked.
Yeah. Because
it's such a radical departure. But it was a very brave move. Now, some years ago, I travelled up to Newcastle with Manfred. Because whenever Earth Band play, I always go, okay? So Euston Station, I looked over, and I saw Manfred. Manfred! Oh, hi, Barry. You're not coming to see us again, are you? Well, of course. So we travelled up to Newcastle together, and it was very interesting to get his views. Now, he asked me about the 60s, and I told him, well, Manfred, I did prefer the Mark Darboe period. And his reaction was, oh, no, Barry. Okay, you told me about the time the band broke up. It had to end. And I said, look, Manfred, the way that I view it, had the band continued as Manfred Mann, you probably would have ended up being a cabaret-type band. He said to me, exactly. You would have ended up being like the Hollies, doing Batley variety clubs, and I would not let that happen. And I wanted to show people that I could, be adventurous, and I could be, that I could do other music to what I was famous for. I like Manfred enormously. I think he's a great guy. Great musician, very, very talented man, actually, as well. They're not really that active anymore. Apparently the Earth Band is still going, but they don't tour in England, which is a shame.
When's the last time you saw them?
The last time was about 7 years ago. They played in Frome, and I've always thought they're a very good live band, and I've always liked Manfred. I've always got a lot of time for him. He's a very interesting person, very astute. Reminds me a bit like a professor, a very intelligent guy, and I think these are really good records. I mean, if I had to pick the first and second Manfred Mann Chapter 3 album, they've done a second LP with a great Keith cover, I would say that if I took the best tracks from both albums, you would have a really stunning album. But I like them all. I mean, if you have a look at this, particularly interesting was that everything was written by Manfred Mann and Mike Hugg. And unfortunately, I think Manfred tended to, when the Earth Band, when it started, it was like a proper band. But as time went by, he relied too much on doing covers. Blinded by the Light and Father a Day, Mighty Quinn, they were definitely the definitive versions. But again, very interesting period piece. Okay, so we come to that one. That's Manfred Mann, Chapter 3. Right, haha, Gran Bond. Do you know him?
Not really.
Right, I can tell you about him, right, because I've got some stories to tell you about Gran Bond, okay? The Gran Bond organisation, with Jack Bruce, Dick Hextall-Smith and Ginger Baker, were probably the greatest rhythm and blues band. Incredible. Gran Bond was a very, very talented Hammond organ player. Vincent Crane, who we'll be talking about a little bit later on, swore by Gran Bond. Gran Bond was also the first Hammond organ player to play the bass pedals, okay? Very, very good saxophone player as well. Amazing. Now, I did actually see Gran Bond playing once, and it was at Hyde Park with King Crimson.
That would have been a good show. Was that in 1969?
No, well, I used to go to all the Hyde Park gigs because my granddad lived in Park Lane. So fairly often, I remember I saw Pink Floyd there.
Wow.
I was 12 years old, by the way, with Edgar Broughton. That was a revelation.
12 years old and seeing Pink Floyd.
I was down the front, loved it. Yeah, amazing show. And then I went back and I saw Grand Funk Railroad. I just used to see all these, like, you know, hippies descending on Hyde Park, and right was going on over there, Black Hill Enterprises. So I saw Grand Funk Railroad with Humble Pie. That was another great one. Slightly lower key, I saw Jack Bruce Band and King Crimson. That was really good. And I saw Gran Bond playing on stage. Great singer. Really, really good. I mean, him and Jack Bruce together, like, you know, the work miracles. Anyway, fast forward, 1973, I was 15 years old, okay? A year away from leaving school. And I used to go every Sunday, come rain, shine, no matter what, I would always be going off to the Roundhouse, okay? They used to have these Sunday afternoon concerts. I mean, I saw some amazing shows there, I really did. One particular one I went to was Edgar Broughton again. I became a big fan of theirs. And they were playing with Kingdom Come. Do you know them? Arthur Brown.
Yes.
Amazing. I mean, they're one of the very best live bands I ever saw. I saw them twice, but they were stunning, okay? Anyway, I was on the bus, okay, going up towards the Roundhouse, and I looked over and I recognised Gran Bond. Oh. You Gran Bond? Yeah, that's right, mate. Yeah, that's right. Oh, you go off to the Roundhouse? Oh, yeah, just go off to the Roundhouse, mate. Yeah, so from then onwards, for about the last 10 months of his life, I used to see him every week. Now, he was a very large man. He used to walk around in robes, and everyone kind of like called him Stinky Graham. He had this horrible smell about him. You could never get too close. His hygiene was something else, okay? But lovely guy. I mean, he told you so much. He just talked really quickly. He was on amphetamines all the time. But he used to always, you just never really knew. There would be some element in truth in what he was saying to you, but he used to go on and on about Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce. He knew that I liked the Mahavishnu Orchestra. Oh, Barry, you know that John McLaughlin used to be in my band? Yeah, I know that, Graham, yeah. I taught me everything you knew, you know. Oh, really, Graham? I never knew that you were a guitarist. I thought you were an organist, or you a guitarist as well. Anyway, he offered to do my horoscope, and I went round to his flat, and it was like something out of a Hummer horror flick. It was like, I walked in, it was so woozy in there, and I didn't know very much about Graham, but he was very heavily into astrology. And he done me like, we started doing this chart reading, and I remember looking over and they had piles and piles of bottles of this weird cough mixture called Collis Brown. I said, bloody hell, Graham, what's all that? Oh, well, you don't want to fancy do me a little favour, do you, Barry? I said, well, it depends what it is, Graham. Well, apparently all the pharmacists had banned it from going in. You'd get this Collis Brown, it was about 25p a bottle, and it had small traces of morphine in. Oh, you know, you drink about 20 bottles of that, it'd get you cranked up. I said, really, Graham? Anyway, for a while I stopped seeing him at the Roundhouse, and then I heard that he was in prison, in Brixton Prison, okay? Warrant out for his arrest. He was a bit of a heavy drug user. So he decided to come clean. Went into Notting Hill Gate Police Station and lit a joint up and said, aren't you going to arrest me then? No, piss off. Oh, there's a warrant out for my arrest. So anyway, I don't know what the whole caboodle was, but he wasn't seen for about 6 weeks, okay? Short sentence. I think they just put him in and got him out again, okay? Then the last time I saw him was in a shop called Dobell's in Charing Cross Road. It's a, you know, very famous jazz shop. It used to have a good selection of second-hand records in there, okay? Anyway, so, hello, Barry. Oh, Graham, hello, mate, how you been? Went round Leicester Square. That day he was great. Graham, hallelujah, you've even washed your hair. Oh, yeah. Oh, Graham, and how are you? You know, great. We sat in the park for a bit. Straight away, the tarot cards came out. Graham, no. Barry, you wouldn't... I said, not Collis Brown's, Graham, okay? No. But we had a very, 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 you know, great meet-up, and I really enjoyed his company that day. Usual about John McLaughlin, about Jack Bruce, about Ginger Baker. Oh, yeah, I done this and I done that. Right, okay, great, brilliant. And we promised to meet up, and a couple of weeks later, I heard that he threw himself under a tube train at Finsbury Park. It was horrifying. And I relayed the story to Pete Brown, and Pete Brown said to me that he was convinced that Graham was being followed by a demon. I don't know the full story, but I mean, everyone has their theories. But lovely guy. Unfortunately, unless you have an interest in astrology, this is an album which I wouldn't particularly recommend. It is very hard going. When he recorded this, it's when he was playing this, he was also moonlighting with Ginger Baker's Air Force. I think that, you know, because he was out of work, Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker, basically, both of them gave him another chance and a bit of work. And after that, I think he was a bit washed up, unfortunately. Lovely guy, an amazing talent. But if I were watching this, please stick to the organisation albums for a much better listening experience. Okay, so we just got a few more to go then, Jake. How many more shall I do?
You could go as many as you want.
Okay, all right, we've got a few more then, okay? Here we go. Fairfield Parlor, From Home to Home. Do you know about this band?
I've heard of them. But
Great record, okay? Beautiful. This is one which I've also had all the way through. I've got a few more copies in there, okay? Kaleidoscope, they were called Kaleidoscope, had two albums, Tangerine Dream, Faintly Blowing. Very highly rated by collectors of psychedelic music. They really are, okay? This was another Marcus Keith cover, okay? Look at that one, From Home to Home. Great record. I remember the first time I heard of Fairfield Parlor, they appeared on Top of the Pops.
Okay.
And they had a song out called Bordeaux Rosé, and heard it being played a lot. I remember Kenny Everett had a big thing about it, and I used to listen to, you know, Johnny Walker, Kenny Everett, then I eventually used to listen to sounds of the 70s. And that's how I eventually discovered a lot of these progressive rock bands. And I mentioned also about a programme called Disco 2. Yeah, I bought them. I bought that album on the strength of Bordeaux Rosé, and fine album. They had the very best elements of the 60s Hollies and the 60s Bee Gees. I know that the Bee Gees were a big influence. 1941 mining disaster. Great record. Unfortunately, that's one which I thought at the time would have taken off, but it didn't. And there was a lot of copies of that album around at one time as well. I mean, you try and find it now, you can't get it for love nor money, but it's a great, there's nothing, every track works to perfection. I think it's a great record. Really, I do. And look, out of the three albums, that's definitely my favourite one, although they did record a fourth album, which was going to be recorded for Threshold Records, the Moody Blues label, but the band broke up. I knew the drummer a little bit, Dan Bridgman. He used to own a shop in South Kensington called Maskell's. I remembered him. Got a very high-pitched voice. Lovely guy. And I just remember playing that, and I went, I thought there's something very familiar about you. Oh, yeah. And I said, yeah, you're a drummer, aren't you? That's right. I know, Fairfield Parlor. Yeah, you did. Yeah, I was amazed, but great record, okay? Well, here we go. Now we're going to get into the real winners. What can I say? The first Black Sabbath album. Okay, well, Coliseum did get to number 15 in the charts, okay? This album was recorded hurriedly, and it came out very quickly. I think it was released on Friday the 13th, 1970. Did you know that?
Fitting.
How fitting. And the same day as the first Atomic Rooster album. They both came out on the same day.
Oh.
Yes, there you go. The first track on the first Rooster album is Friday the 13th, so I think they picked that pretty well.
Yeah.
This was, what can I say? I'm going to give it to you, a masterpiece of heavy rock. You listen to the opening track, Black Sabbath, Behind the Wall of Sleep, NIB. Wow, just takes you into a different stratosphere completely. This album also had two cover versions, Into Dunbar Retaliation's Warning and Evil Woman, Don't Play Your Little Games with Me. That was done by an American band called The Crow. But amazing. This was also Marcus Keith, okay? That was done near Reading, Maple Durham in Reading, okay? I've actually seen it.
Is it
Store
still
there.
there?
Yes, I mean, this was something...
So you could recreate that.
Yes.
If you wanted to, you could go there and take a photo with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at that. I mean, that is an amazing piece of art. Great. I mean, you know, very gothic as well. Apparently, this lady's name was Louise.
Okay.
And she wasn't on the other albums, okay? The ones I showed you before. Brilliant debut album, okay? Absolutely love it. Right, here we go. Another Keith album cover, okay? Jimmy Campbell, Half Baked, okay? Now, Jake, let me just talk to you about this chap for a second, okay? He was a Liverpudlian singer-songwriter. Very good, in fact. For any record buyer of the 1970s, you could not, this was one Vertigo album you could not get away from, okay? It was everywhere. The record and tape exchanges, bargain basement. I remember once seeing this in a reduction down to about 30 pence.
What are these ones worth?
Well, I'm not going to talk about monetary values because I'm a collector, okay? For me, it's about the music. This is one which I've recently come to rediscover again, and Jimmy Campbell has now become quite a prominent cult figure. He was with a psychedelic band called the 30-Second Turn-Off, the Kirby's, who used to do a lot of gigs for the Beatles at one time. And he never branched outside Liverpool. I think he made that his niche. He was also on Disco 2. I remember seeing him on Disco 2 once with Rare Bird and Love Affair. They tried to become a progressive rock band for a while, and really good performer. Great record. I wouldn't say the title track is magnificent. And I remember when I heard the Vertigo Annual in 1970, upon hearing Jimmy doing the title track from this album, left me breathless. It really is a great title track, and I didn't think the rest of the album was as strong as that track, but it's something which I've listened to again And again, I think it's got a lot going for it. This was become very desirable, which I'm glad to see. And I'm glad to see that Jimmy's got a bit of recognition, okay? Right, he passed away about 15 years ago from emphysema. But good talent, though, you know. Right, so here we go. Ha, 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 ha. Legend, okay? Legend. Well, I've decided to pick this one because it's one Vertigo album that doesn't really fit on the label.
You think so?
No. Because this is predominantly a rock and roll type album. I think it's pretty good, okay? The main guy in Legend was Mickey Jubb. Very good Southend. They call him the Don of Southend. But what is particularly interesting about Legend was the fact, do you know Dr. Feelgood? You know the band Dr. Feelgood? They swore, this was like Lee Brillo, the late singer of Dr. Feelgood, swears by this, that had he not heard it, he would never have packed in his day job as a solicitor's clerk to form a rock and roll band. I mean, he held this album in the highest regard. I rather like it. It's a bit of rock and roll, a bit of rockabilly on there, but some good rock tracks, but it's good. And this lineup didn't last very long, and there's a connection, the drummer, Bill Fairfield, went on to join T-Rex. Yes, in time for the Electric Warrior album. And I know that Mark Bolan really highly rated this as well.
I suppose he would have heard it and thought, that's the drummer I'd like to
I mean, sometimes you listen to music and you don't really expect, but, you know, surprisingly, this was one of the early ones, which I remember as being a real cult album when Pub Rock was in. When Dr. Feelgood made it, suddenly Legend became very desirable. Everyone wanted to get them. Yes, good album. Good album. I like it. Right, well, here we go. We're going to save the best for last, okay? Wow, here we finally arrive, okay? Anyone who knows me, oh, by the way, I'm wearing my Gentle Giant t-shirt again for the second time, which I won doing our first shoot. And the reason why is because I absolutely love them. They are, in fact, my second favourite band of all time.
Second favourite
band. Manfred Mann's Earth Band is number one. Okay, now I've always said I will never go beyond that because of the way how I discovered them. Gentle Giant were absolutely unique. An incredible band. I mean, how they came. Do you know Simon Dupree and the Big Sound?
No.
Okay, Jake boy, education here, okay? They were a soul band from Portsmouth. And Simon Dupree was Derek Shawman, fictional kind of like pop star. They've done a thing called The Ravers, which I think you can still see on YouTube. It's great, about a working band in the 1960s. But they had a bit of success, had to hit a single called Kites. Very, very good record. But they did appear several times on beat clubs, so they were fairly well known. Anyway, when they broke up, the Shawmans, it was basically, the Gentle Giant was formed around three brothers, Derek, Ray and Phil Shawman, okay? Decided to, give it another go, and we want to change our style of music. We became a progressive rock band. And they were managed by Jerry Bron. And then they auditioned Carrie Minier, very talented keyboard player, cellist, multi-instrumentalist. And I think it was Carrie that really defined that sound. They got Gary Green in. It was quite funny. I've read stories about them. When they were auditioning musicians, people would turn up and, see the Simon Dupree and the Big Sound on the drum kit and say, oh no, we're not going to be joining a pop group. And Gary Green, who was the mainstay with the band, well, the mainstay guitarist, sorry, I should say, said, right, can I tune up? All right, mate, tune up. Right, got the gig straight away. And they were amazing. What I am absolutely delighted to say about Gentle Giant, when I first discovered them, was pretty much when this album came out. I saw it in a record shop and I thought, wow, what's this? I've got to have it. Yeah, again, it's not their best, but it was a very, very good start. Just love the whole package, okay?
I like how when you fold out a lot of these Vertigo albums, it makes a much bigger picture. It kind of extends the picture.
Yeah, I do, yeah. So you've got the whole thing there, okay? Gentle Giant. Brilliant, yeah. This was amazing. I'm delighted to say, and I'm going to have to say this on camera now, that from the very first time when I heard them, I became a massive fan. Unfortunately, I did see them a few times. They stopped touring in the UK after 1976, but they had success in Canada and they were very popular in Italy as well. Amazing. They're all instrumentalists, multi-instrumentalists. You saw them live and they really appeared to be enjoying themselves, and they created the most incredible sound, barbershop quartets. They really had something. And when they broke up, I think by the time they broke up, they really had seen their best days. Their last three albums weren't particularly anywhere near the standards of their period with Vertigo or WWA. Anyway, lo and behold, I think now alongside Yes, certainly other progressive bands like Van der Graaf Generator, who I particularly like as well, Gentle Giant have become massive, and I think they're very highly revered in progressive rock circles. A couple of years ago, there was a plaque in commemoration of them in Portsmouth. Had I known, I would have gone. Amazing. Derek Shulman, the lead singer, went on to become a huge impresario in America. He discovered bands like Bon Jovi. He did Cinderella, Dan Reed Network, but he's very, very involved in music, even to this day. Phil Shulman, unfortunately, his brother, passed away last year. Anyway, great band. In fact, I would recommend all their Vertigo albums up until, I think all their albums up until Freehand, I would certainly rediscover. And then onwards, Interview was good. Missing Piece, I thought, was probably their worst album. Not one that I get much satisfaction out of, but these I think were still great. So we're going to come to my number one favourite Vertigo album of all time.
What, number one favourite?
Number one, oh yes, here we are, and it's Aphrodite's Child, 666. Yes, Jake, the greatest Vertigo album of them all.
Do you think that?
Well, I mean, look, Jake, it would always be, look, what we said before, Jake, about having personal favourites, it's down to personal taste.
Yes.
Now, I could very easily say, right, I like Eto, Hold Your Fire, I like very much so, I love Valentine Suite, and I love the Black Sabbath albums, I equally love the Gentle Giant albums, okay? But as a work of art, this was completely unbeatable.
Tell me more about it.
Well, the first thing I knew about Aphrodite's Child, it was Demis Roussos and Vangelis, now two very famous Greek musicians, and had a couple of hit singles. Rain and Tears was one. Bit of a cheesy international hit. Not that I thought anything of them at all. And they brought out this album. And the first time that I heard Aphrodite's Child again was by buying a Vertigo sampler called Suck It and See. That was the first album in Spaceship Vertigo was Manfred Mann's Earth Band Messin', okay? Suck It and See launched the New Look label, okay? Then it had lots of new acts on. And I remember this album being around at the time. I don't think I bought it straight away. So I bought Suck It and See, and I heard this amazing track on it called The Four Horsemen.
I've heard that one too.
And I thought, hang on, this is incredible. You know, right, I've got to play this again. What's the whole album like? Well, I thought, well, there's going to be one way to go and find out. I'm going to go and buy a copy of it, which I did. And I played it all the way through. And I think it's the mother of all concept albums. And no one spoke about it for years. No, nobody, just not mentioned. And now it's seen as being a masterpiece, which it is. An incredible, all the way through. Not one, some of it's a little bit, it is what it is, but it's an album which is a great listening experience. And you've got Irene Pappas, who is a Greek actress. She does some narratives on there. Amazing. Demis Roussos had a lot of success after, as Vangelis did. After they broke up, Demis Roussos plays bass. And when they completed it, Philips Phonogram didn't know what the hell to go and do with it. Okay, we'll put it out on Vertigo and we'll hope for the best, because it's a bit of an oddball type of label. And wonderful record. Absolutely incredible. I mean, Jake, I could go on and on and on and on, but I think we're going to have to come back, and if this is popular, I mean, I can't believe the hits that I've had, and if this proves as popular, you're always welcome to come back anytime. We'll do part two, okay?
Even if it's not, happy to come back even without a camera and just...
Yeah, sure. So here we go.
Thank you so much for showing
Well, it's
me.
been an absolute pleasure. Once again, before we sign off, and thank you very much for coming back to see me again, Jake, I would like to say thank you to everyone for watching, and I have been recognised a few times at record fairs. I got even noticed in the coffee shop. Sorry, mate, you the bloke I saw on YouTube recently? Yes, I am. Oh, you came across, you're a bit eccentric, aren't you? Well, I try and be, but I got my heart in the right place, and I think it's kind of like, you know, really being there and still having the great feel for the music, Jake, and having a real love of what I've done. I still do it for love. Never to me has it for 1 second been about money. Just about to finish off the Charisma Records book, by the way, okay?
Please tell people how they can purchase,
Well,
because so many people are asking...
I know. Well, I'm going to start doing record fairs, and I will definitely keep you in touch when I do record fairs, Jake, okay?
Okay, so
I want to get out there and I want to meet the public as well. And I'd love people to come over and talk to me about the music or look at the books. I'll sign everything, okay?
Okay.
I'll even sign one for Jimmy Page if he asks me, okay? See, gotcha.
Thank you, Barry.
Pleasure, Jake. Thank you
Nice
so
to see
much.
you.
And thank you so much.